So the format is we have two tellers each night. The first teller will come up. Stories range about 15 to 20 minutes in storytelling. I'll come up after our teller has completed and check in and see if they're open to any questions. And if so, then we will kick it open to the audience for any questions you might want to ask, anything that came up that you were curious about in the story you just heard. We'll do a few minutes of question and answers, and then we'll move to our second teller of the evening and follow that. Our goal is to keep to the timeline so that we will have you out in the hour that we promise, richly fulfilled by a set of stories. Maya Angelou says that there's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. And so tonight we're going to first hear one of those untold stories brought to us by Eric Ray. Eric and I first met, I don't know if he remembers, but we were doing a community canvas, walking through New Haven, talking door to door with residents, hearing what their concerns were with the, again, idea of building a stronger community. And so we've known each other for several years through that. I will let you hear from Eric. Woo.
So January 2016, my life was fine. Everything was great. I was living in Meriden with my wife and 2 cats. I had several part-time jobs that paid me well enough to save money, pay bills, and even take a vacation. My wife and I were preparing for a cruise that we were going to go on for our 8th wedding anniversary. 2016 was a leap year. My wife and I got married on leap year. And so things were good. The 2016 was also the year that I turned 37. And I don't know if it was whether 3 and 7 are my lucky numbers or what maybe 37 represented like late 30s for me, and that felt odd. But I started getting really introspective about what was happening with my life, where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do, what was really my purpose. And I decided that year that I would follow the thing that I was really passionate about, which was coaching. So I pursued a coaching training and certificate program. And from that time, my life really began to accelerate. Things were happening and continue even right up to this moment. It feels to some degree that even now is something of a culmination of what's been happening over the last 2 years. So in 2 years, I took and completed a coaching training and certification program. I moved from Meriden to New Haven, my hometown. I launched 2 businesses. I met or reconnected with a brother of mine who I hadn't seen in 25 years. And I met my father for the first time. I took a trip to Peru and welcomed the newest member to our family, a brand new baby dog named Yambu. So most of you here don't know me that well. But if you did, you'd know that that is an unprecedented level of change in my life. I am Mr. Slow and Steady, sometimes much to my wife's chagrin, but certainly that was the way that I moved in the world. There wasn't much change. It's pretty comfortable, it's pretty happy. But I slowly began to realize that I wanted more. I wanted more fulfillment. I wanted more excitement. I wanted more art. I wanted more music. I wanted more. So, fast forward to June of 2018, and I took a trip to Peru, the aforementioned Peru trip. It was a fantastic trip in many ways, but I think one of the ways that it had the most profound impact on me was the sort of crystallization of three really simple but powerful lessons. So those lessons, briefly, are the importance of doing my work. I have work to do, and it's important that I get it done. Two was one step at a time. It's always just one step. And the third one, and maybe the most important, was guarding my thoughts, being a good steward of my own brain and my own thoughts. So, let me tell you a little something about Peru, because this is where, although many of the events of the last 2 years contributed to this sort of understanding for me, that week in Peru really helped that to settle in my bones. So Peru, if any of you have been there, you know that Peru is very high up. The altitude is 11,152 feet above sea level. So those are just numbers. What's that mean? Well, for comparison, Colorado, that we know as the mile-high city, is 5,280 feet up. So Cusco, the city where I was staying in Peru, is 2 Colorados up. Okay? It's high. What that meant for me was altitude sickness. I had a very difficult time breathing. I was nauseous constantly. Because of the nausea, I couldn't eat, didn't want to eat, which is an odd juxtaposition to be hungry but unable to eat. I couldn't sleep because of the thin air. I would fall asleep and wake up with pounding headaches. And what seemed like regular everyday physical tasks became monumental. I mean, climbing a set of stairs became amazingly challenging in this altitude. So here I am. I'm thinking, this is going to be great, Peru. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to have a great time. But life and Peru had another thing in mind. And it quickly became clear to me that this trip was not about party or hanging out or any of that stuff. This trip was about work. This trip was about introspection and searching inside myself for really where I was going, who I am. So I'm 3 days into this trip before we began a 2-day trek to Machu Picchu, which was really one of the major reasons we went to Peru. Now, Machu Picchu, for those of you that don't know, is the Incan citadel high in the Andes Mountains. And there are a couple of ways to get there, but the way that we chose was actually to hike there, which seemed like a great idea from Connecticut. But when we arrived, I realized, man, I'm having a hard time walking down the street. How am I going to climb this mountain? I mean, literally, a mountain. But this is what we're here for. I've got work to do, so I'm gonna try. But this is maybe the first time in my life that I'm trying something that I'm quite sure I can't do. I'm sure I can't do this. Prior to that, I didn't try things if I didn't think I was going to at least have some success. But this thing, I'm in. I'm in too deep. I can't not try this. And I know myself well enough to know I don't think I'm going to make this. I know I'm not going to make this. But I'm going to try anyway. So, we begin the trek. And this path is weaving back and forth up this mountain. It's like a zigzag curve up the mountain. And I'm tired because I haven't slept, and I'm weak because I haven't eaten, and I can't breathe, and I'm hot, and I'm scared. So, about 2.5 hours in, I get my first cramp. And it's painful. And also, I'm determined now. Because while I'm 2 hours in, and this feels like enough of a commitment to say, I'm going to at least keep going. I have the one good leg. Let's see what we can do. Well, maybe 45 minutes after that, after having compensated for the crampy leg, the other leg cramps. And when the other leg cramps, now my whole body is seized with pain. I'm having spasms in my back. I'm realizing all of the food that I haven't eaten in the last 3 days. I'm dehydrated, I'm exhausted, and I am 3 hours into a 7-hour hike. And now I'm actually getting scared. Now it's real fear. Stomach turning, voice shaking, pouring sweat, kind of existential fear. And there's nothing that makes you present in your body more than pain. When you're in pain, there really isn't much else that matters. It's just that. It's just the pain. It's the moment that you're in. And so my mind began to sort of search for strategies. How am I going to do this? Still really believing that I probably can't, but I'm not going to quit. They're going to carry me down before I quit. I'm not going to stop. So I keep pushing. And I begin to ask myself, well, can I take one more step? I don't need to think about the top of the mountain. I don't need to think about tomorrow. I don't even have to think about the pain. I just need to think about one more step. Can I take another step? And the answer to that question, the first time I asked it, was, yeah, I can take one more step. So I'll do that. And then I took another step, and then I asked myself again, can I do it again? Yeah. No, this is the right leg now. Can you do it now? Yeah. Left leg, you ready? Yeah. So step after step after step, I asked myself this question, can I do it? And I kept moving. I took breaks, many of them. I tried to make it a point to conserve my water. I didn't have a lot of it. They only let you carry, what you have on your back. And I kept moving up the side of this mountain, zigzagging back and forth. The mountain was so steep at times, it felt more like climbing a ladder than walking on a trail. It was literally on all fours climbing up at times. And maybe about 80% of the way up, I encounter a black person. And I'm amazed. This is the first person of color I've seen since I've been in Peru in 3 days. I mean, aside from the Peruvians, but like a black person, like an American black guy is from Texas. And I was like, wow, this is a sign. This is amazing. Like, I'm so encouraged. And so I stop and I rest where he was resting. And as I'm resting, there are people who are coming back down the mountain, and they're saying, you're so close, you're almost there, keep going, encouragement. And I would say, well, how much further? And some people say 15 minutes, some people say half hour, some people say an hour. In other words, nobody knows. Nobody knows. It's different for everybody. That's the reality, right? So, and then the guy from Texas talks to me. And he says, I'm going to be the voice of reason. I see you. You're a big guy like me. I know your knees got to be on fire. I know your back is hurting. I know your legs hurt. It's okay if you don't want to go any further. No one's going to judge you. It's all right. And it was so sweet. His words were so sweet on my ears. And it was seductive, and I wanted to stop. I really, really wanted to stop. And so I'm faced with a choice in this moment. I can say, he's right. No one's going to judge me. My knees do hurt. I might be doing some serious damage to myself. I'm not going to make the Olympic climbing team. It's okay. And so I stood there for about 15 minutes, and this was the longest break I had taken. Prior to that, I tried to limit my breaks to 5 minutes. I didn't want to get comfortable. I didn't want to cool down. But 15 minutes I stood and I debated and I wondered and I looked back at him, and he was so comfortable, he wasn't even sweating. And I said, I might not make it to the top, but I won't not make it because I quit. I won't not make it because I stopped. If I don't make it, if I'm not good enough in this moment, that's fine. I'll get better. I'll keep working. But I'm not going to quit. That's my choice to make. I am not going to stop. This is my goal. This is what I came here for. I am not quitting. So I pressed on. It wasn't 15 minutes. It wasn't a half hour. It took me a full 90 minutes to get to my destination. But I arrived. And coming around the corner and seeing Machu Picchu for the first time, after 7 hours of grueling hiking, was one of the most transcendent experiences I've ever had in my life. It was worth every bit of blood, sweat, and tears that I poured on that mountain. I did bleed. But it was absolutely magnificent. And each one of those lessons sunk deeply into my veins. Excuse me. And beat through my heart. It was fantastic. So, excuse me. The 3 lessons. Do your work. It's only one step. You only have one more step. The whole mountain is just one step. When I was in the airport, I wrote a couple of quick things down in my journal. Is it okay if I read them to you quickly?
Don't rush.
There were so many lessons offered me on this trip. I'll do my best to capture what's available to me now. Guard my health. It's my most precious asset. Do your work. It will be hard. You will not want to do it. It will hurt to get it done. You will have good reasons not to do it. It is your work and it must be done. One step at a time is how every job gets done. There are no magic tricks. There's nothing fancy about it. The smallest task to the mountain climb require only that you keep putting one foot in front of the other. If it becomes too much to bear, stop, rest, gather yourself. It's okay if you're not the first to the top. You may be the last one down, it's okay. Do not trivialize your work by making it a race. It is your life. Breathe gratitude every day. Recognize and serve others the best you can. Guard your thoughts. They are more precious than you can ever know. Be art. Be a work of art, particularly crafted for your taste and style. Do not listen or take advice from those who have already quit. That's my story. Yeah.
Thank you for taking us on that amazing journey. I'm really curious, as I felt like I traveled up the mountain with you. I'm wondering, what was the thought about having, is it 7 hours back down then? I mean, I'm just wondering what's the thought about having that.
Yeah, so it's a 2-day trek, and at the end of the first day, you actually take a bus back down.
Oh, thanks.
And then a bus takes you back up the next day to that point, and then you climb more. Yeah, so I wasn't sleeping on the side of the mountain.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the one saving grace, actually.
Good. What else? What do you all have questions about?
Yeah.
That was, say, an incredibly vivid portrait of you going up the mountain. One thing I wondered about, you did you start out on this trek alone, or were you part of an organized group, or was your family with you? Because until you got to the guy from Texas, it seemed like there were other people around, but you didn't really talk about interacting with them, or were they worried, or anything like that?
Excuse
about
me.
the background scenery.
Yeah. So I went to Peru to meet a friend of mine there. And her and I did the trek together. And in order to get into Machu Picchu, you need a guide. So it was my friend and the guide. My friend is much more fit than I am. And so she left me behind. She was gone. And the guide is really just there to make sure you don't die on the side of the mountain.
Did he ever look like he was worried?
Well, maybe. Maybe. But he gave me enough room, and I think he understood that what was happening with me was more than just hiking up the mountain. Yeah. So I had, so it felt, the short answer is, it felt for long stretches of time that I was in fact by myself.
Anybody else have questions?
Yes. Now that you're home and settled, how has that impacted you in real time? Now that the lessons have crystallized into one.
Yeah. So there is a sort of, I guess I'd call it like a sense of urgency about the things that I want to accomplish and the things I want to do. Actually, part of the reason I'm here is for that reason. And so, so it shows up in a bunch of different ways, but these are lessons that, almost daily sort of come up in some kind of way that, when I don't want to get out of the bed in the morning, or, when my mind starts to wander and whatever, guard your thoughts and do your work and those kind of things. So, so it shows up pretty nonstop.
So your third lesson that you took from it was the issue, I think, of guarding your thoughts.
Yes.
Could you speak to that a bit more?
Yeah. So my brain, and I think lots of people's brains, have a tendency to wander and to sometimes tell us things that are not constructive, not helping. And if you just let your mind go, it would be easy to believe those things. I thought when I started this trip that I really was not going to make it up this mountain. And had I let that idea linger through the first and the second cramp and the back spasms and the guy telling me, just relax, I might not have made it to the top. But I had to stay very focused on guarding my thoughts. Sorry, I have a tickle in my throat.
I think one more. Yeah.
You said at the top that you've studied coaching. What does that mean?
Oh, so I'm a life coach.
So what do you do?
So I work with people to help them find their own fulfillment. My role is to help people, excuse me, my role is to help people sort of build the capacity to create deeper and lasting fulfillment in their lives.
Has the story come up in any of your coaching?
I try not to inject my own story into the coaching, but certainly it's a part of who I am. So the story itself doesn't come up in the coaching, but I'm sure the lessons do. Yep. Oh. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Please join me